Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wills, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I'm here. We have
Good.
got just an action-packed show for everybody. Action-packed.
Absolutely. No, so we're got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about whether or not, a government can determine if you need to start a business or not. We're going to talk about Google. We're going to talk about libertarian hero Hunter Biden, and maybe some ridiculous news too. So
Yeah.
we got
We've
a
got
bunch
some
out there.
wildly kind of funny news that I'm going to lay on you, and then probably some of our listeners may not be aware of some of the scandalous behavior going on out there in the world. We are going to bring it home to them.
Oh yeah, no, there's some ridiculous stuff out there, and for the folks who are listening to this on the podcast, last week I in fact was not talking with a mask on. Just because Tim is unvaccinated does not mean that I am talking, wearing a mask during my show that the video audience can see. It was just because I had the wrong mic hooked up. It's because I'm an idiot. That's the real reason. Y'all gotta tell me these things. Like
you weren't talking through your good mic. Is that what the situation was?
That's what it was. So like somehow I disconnected the mic on accident, and so it doesn't just the sound will still come through. There's like 3 other mics that are like by my computers, my laptop mic, my webcam mic, and there's also one somewhere else too. I forget what, but it's probably a government mic. But either way, it gets picked up.
Well, ahead of the show, I'm like, man, your voice sounds kind of weird, and you turn something on your microphone, and I'm like, I don't want to make them feel bad. All right, yeah, no, that sounds a lot better.
Yeah, there we go.
And then they were, it was not your normal dulcet tones, brother, like your sweet smoothness.
It sounded like I was talking through a tin can or with a mask on. Like the whole radio show, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna send this to WYSL. They're just not gonna play it.
Yeah, no, I listened to it on Spotify a couple days later, and honestly, I could see where you felt like it wasn't your normal quality performance, but it wasn't as bad as some of my on the road performances.
We're setting the bar super low here, Tim.
Yeah, I know.
I tried to run it through like one of those AI filters too. Like, so they have these things now, right? Supposedly, not supposedly, Adobe is making this claim, like, and there's a free tool out there that, like, if you are talking through a crappy mic, you can run it through this filter and it for free, and it will fix bad audio quality if you're talking through a bad mic. It was so bad it didn't work. Like I've used it before on other things. Like it actually works really well. It makes it sound like you're talking in a professional podcast mic. Takes out like some of the pops and like the plosives and like weird background noise and stuff. For some reason it gave me like a weird lisp, and it was still bad. It still sounded like I was talking with like my hand over my mouth.
Yeah,
it's like less tinny, but
yeah. All right.
Anyway, this isn't a discussion on how to achieve, passable audio quality for podcasting or radio. We're here to talk about the fun news stuff.
And we do have some interesting fun news.
Yeah. So again, we're going to go in at 4 minutes, and if you're just joining us again, we're going to talk about your right to open a business. We're going to talk about libertarian hero Hunter Biden. We're going to talk about Google. We're going to talk about the ridiculous news out there. We're going in 3, 2.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and what an epic week it's been already, and it's only Tuesday.
Absolutely. Oh, guys, we could do a full show on ridiculous news. just a full show on it. Because someone reminded me of another one that I almost even forgot about, the F-35 getting lost
Yeah,
for a
and
minute
then
there.
the
Wasn't even on my
entire
list. I knew
yeah,
about it, but
and then they grounded. Look, like this is a sign that there was some sort of hacking going on because they grounded the entire fleet for 2 days.
they're
Like
worried about it.
after it just disappeared, there was
Yeah,
some rumors
they
going
lost
around
it.
on
It
Twitter.
was too stealthy. They couldn't figure out where it went.
They lost it for a while. They finally found it. It's a class A incident, which means over $2.5 million worth of damage. These planes cost like $100 million. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
ridiculous.
class A incident. All right.
Yeah. So we weren't going to talk about this. We do have some actual substantial policy stuff to talk about. We're gonna start with the policy heavy stuff first. We're gonna talk about uh an interesting article Tim came across about opening a business in Louisiana specifically for special needs children. We're gonna talk about that,
Yeah.
and we're also gonna talk about our favorite libertarian hero, Hunter Biden.
Not the hero
And
we prayed for, but perhaps the hero we deserve, Kevin.
yes, that's right. The hero we deserve, an adequate, an adequate title for Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to some of the stuff related to the Google monopoly lawsuit, and then, and
Sure.
only then, we get to the dessert section. We talk about all the ridiculous news because, boy, is there a lot of it this week.
Holy
It was a weird
cow,
week.
bro. Holy cow. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. It really is. Do you want to start with the lady in Louisiana in New
Yeah.
Orleans?
Yeah. No, let's start.
Ursula,
So,
Urs-
tell us a little bit about that first, Tim.
all right, so her name's Ursula Newell Davis, and she's a licensed social worker, a certified CSLW kind of deal, who has long wanted to offer assistance to parents to help get their kids ready before school. She's calling it open a care service for special needs children. She feels as though she can have a real positive impact. She can help them with their um, hygiene, with things that perhaps their parents are struggling with, especially to get them ready. And she feels that this is
Mhm.
something she's been called to do. And so guess what's standing in her way, man? Like, just guess, guys.
I'm gonna say government licensing, government permission of some
Government.
sort.
Yeah. See, my government is wrong kind of thing. I start with the
No, I
conclusion.
mean you're usually right on that. Like,
That's
it's
true.
not a bad system. I would say you're gonna be right more often than not.
She has to prove to the New Orleans district and the state of Louisiana that her services are needed. That she can't just apply for a license. That her credentials are not good enough to grant her a license to provide what's basically a form of daycare, right? It's like a little
Right.
bit social work intensive because she wants to actually teach them how to get ready, right?
Yeah.
So,
Like so specifically it's respite care, right? Like so it's not
right,
really like the way she's structuring it isn't exactly meant as like daycare in the same way that like normal daycare operates. It's again assisting a very specific population of children and families who need help with again, so like the getting ready thing or just like the kind of in between care, not necessarily the primary child care, but like the support when uh family members who are the primary caretakers have to work and kids still need help again getting ready or going to bed or taking care of themselves, doing that sort of thing, right? And so it is like a very niche, a very focused form of care. And like to me, like again, to us on kind of the libertarian spectrum of things, like our thoughts are always like, well, if people have a demand for these services, if people want these services, if people are willing to pay for these services or can get someone else to pay for it on their behalf or whatever, then why shouldn't she be allowed to try it? Like it's not there's nothing seemingly inherently harmful in what she's proposing here. That this seems like it's a service that a lot of families might want and might need.
it's something that we witness in New York State, this concept of a certificate of need that limits specific industries like healthcare for a new healthcare facility to come to an area or to be built by a group of doctors. They first have to prove to some sort of government agent that what they want to do is needed by the community. And now that to me is such an abstract concept that I don't even know what to say. Like, how the only way to prove anything to a government agent is to bribe them, as far as I know. Like, here's like $10,000 for you, 5,000. I'll give your wife a job, and then all of a sudden, like, all of your permitting problems go away. Like, that's what certificate
Right.
of
Well,
need
I mean, like
protects.
you're being a bit tongue in cheek, I think, but like effectively, like over time, that sort of process ends up getting legitimized, right? Because like the people who I'm not like certificate of need usually specifically applies to like hospital systems, but like this healthcare type service, it also like sort of it's a similar function.
Sure.
But effectively, like the incumbents get to be the ones who determine what that need is, right? So if you're in a community that has a hospital system and you're trying to open up like a special type of clinic, and like the hospital system doesn't want you there as competition, they're the ones who get to determine if there's a need for that service in your community, in conjunction with maybe other bureaucrats, maybe who may or may not have worked for that same system.
Yeah.
And so suddenly, like, it gets a veil of legitimacy and like objectiveness, but what it actually is incumbent interest protecting their own business and creating like monopolies or near monopolies for their own protected services and denying
Yeah.
consumers the right to alternatives.
So to bring that point home, Kevin, the article points to of a bouquet making license before you can become a florist in Louisiana, which weirdly enough is the committee that they appoint to decide whether you can be a licensed florist happens to be other licensed florists. So
Shocking. Well, they're the experts. That's
just imagine them deciding that they need a competitor. Like, it's simply gobsmackingly incredibly backwards. It shouldn't be done that way. If people want to bring in libertarians, and again, this is actually a pretty good point to drive home, and we're going to talk about it a little bit with Google and stuff. Libertarians are in love with the free market of ideas, the free market of competition, and that's A, how prices come down. That's B, how goods and services get delivered more efficiently. It's a little bit of competition, and this is actually, she's trying to create a niche market that doesn't actually exist, that would probably be very beneficial for, because she's passionate about it too. That's the other thing I get from her
yeah.
article, the sense of it. She really wants to get in there and help these kids for a couple hours a day, just help them with things that she thinks can make their lives better. Like, again, I mentioned hygiene. Again, like learning how to say no to people, like learning how to get yourself ready for school, things that are
Mhm.
important to a segment of the population that isn't automatic for them. She wants to help them with that. And my God, what kind of crazy government licensing system should stand in the way of that? It's insane. It's just insane.
Yeah, and this ends up having like some broader implications. So they're trying to get this case to Supreme Court, and basically challenging a ruling that has to do with the 14th Amendment. It goes all the way back to the slaughterhouse cases, which was a case in like the 1870s. I think it was like 1878,
Yeah,
and or 1873. Sorry, and
close
what?
enough.
But yeah, basically what that had to do with, like, there's a similar situation going on with slaughterhouses in, I think it was also Louisiana. In the South, is after the 14th Amendment. Basically, the folks wanted to be able to kind of start up their own businesses and run slaughterhouses and find ways to be able to do that. And there was kind of a somewhat monopoly on that service, on slaughterhouses specifically, and they determined who got to like slaughter what animals where, when, in what places. And the Supreme Court decided that you don't have a right to earn a living, that uh it is not one of the rights protected by the 14th Amendment, or not that I was ruled on this, the Ninth Amendment either, that they can place restrictions on that without you know any serious consequences. And so you don't really have a fundamental right to go out and just pursue an activity um to make a living for yourself, even if it's a service that doesn't hurt people and it's something that people need, right? Now I'll put those two, those two caveats on it, right? Like, if you're doing something that hurts people, yeah, okay, like that,
Sure.
have a right to do that, or fraud. Okay, yeah, those things aside, and then people need it, right? Like you don't have a right to earn a living in and of itself. Like you have to provide some value to folks, right? Like that's no, you're not owed money for your business. You have to provide value, and then people have to give you their money in exchange for whatever valuable service or good that you're providing. Um, but the government can place a whole lot of restrictions on your ability to do that in ways that should be legitimate and straightforward and do address community needs, like we're seeing in this case here. And it would be great if they end up actually challenging that ruling.
Yeah, if they do it successfully, that would be fantastic. I hope it would have even broader implications to the overall this concept again that we talk about in New York State all too often, that libertarians seem to be the only ones talking about, but certificates of need for healthcare style businesses. Like,
Yeah.
let's see if we can't get rid of them. That would be
No,
great.
if we could massively dismantle like the licensing regimes that exist, at least like scale those back to at least scale them back to have only reasonable licensure expectations related to actual safety. Like if we could even do that, because right now there's a lot of licensing that it is not about that. A lot of licensing is about, again, protecting monopoly, controlling competition, or having a way for the government to get back at you if they don't like it, right? Like in Rochester, we have like it's not, I almost said bodega. That's a New York State thing, but we have like the small like grocery store licenses, right? That are a way for the city to like blatantly, like they've been open about this. It's a way for the city to just like shut down businesses they don't like. That's it. That's the whole reason why it exists.
Yeah,
And so
well,
something
people are
like that,
hanging
I'd
out
imagine.
outside, maybe selling cigarettes in loose fashion.
Yeah, right.
We've got to clean that up. We've got to clean that mess up. We can't have that. We have to have a license control. Shelly, our friend on YouTube, brings up licensed electricians are tested by licensed electricians, and the rigorous licensing exams are put together by existing electricians that serve on a board. Like it's a volunteer board to make sure that they don't let too many people in to compete with them. And look, guys, there's ways around, especially the electrician conundrum, because that's an issue, like Kevin was saying. Like, we would like to know that our electricians are proficient, right? And
Yeah.
certainly it would be very open to be able to hire anybody to do your own electric under the premise of you're going to get it inspected by a third party regardless. And then more people could be entitled to do electric. Probably overall, the electric is going to be just as safe, if not safer. And there it is, the third party certification that can save everybody money and put more electricians into the field, into doing the business. I've always thought that would be a better way of every municipality going about it. Just say, look, yes, get this guy, get whomever to do electric work and get it inspected, period. So,
Yeah.
I think it would be better.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely ways we could do licenses better while considering safety, right? And electrician work is one of them, right? You don't want to mess that up and have a short in your house and cause a fire, right? But
Sure.
still, a lot of there's a lot of room for improvement on licenses, and a lot of the stuff really doesn't have anything to do with safety. It has to do with limiting the number of businesses that compete, because like someone has decided, maybe there's enough barbers around here. Well, who gets to decide that? Like, who gets to decide if there's enough barbers or enough stores or enough
Well,
hospitals, right? Like let the market decide those things. And I know that might mean that some businesses, maybe even some long-standing businesses, end up closing. And you know what? Yeah, that stinks for that business. You're gonna have to innovate and continue serving customers better if you want to stick around. That's how things should work. We shouldn't freeze incumbents in place just because I know you have some notion about like how the economy should be controlled. Well,
yeah.
like we've seen command economy, like literally that's Soviet stuff right there. Like literally, like we're gonna plan out the number of like allowed like shoe stores around here. No, just if someone wants to open up 10 new shoe stores, well, okay, they're taking the risk to do that. Let them risk their own capital to do it.
Absolutely. And look, I have a shout out to a kid that my son played sports with when they were younger. He realized that, you know, high school wasn't necessarily his thing. Going to college wasn't going to be his thing. Playing sports wasn't necessarily going to be his thing, but he decided to become a barber. And he's one of the youngest barbers. He went through the whole, he had great family backing. He had a lot of support. Congratulations to my friend David Morse, who went through the rigors of getting a barber's license at 17 years old in New York State. So congratulations to him. I wish his journey was easier. He could have been cutting hair even sooner because he's a conscientious kid and will do a good job for everybody. So anyways, a shout out to that and a testament to the rigors. I think there was something like 2,000 hours worth of classes that he had to take to
Oh
get
yeah, no, it's like getting a barber's license is ridiculous. Like,
yeah, it was
it's
crazy
a
hard.
lot.
And his dad had to financially back him a little bit, all those things. And it's all wonderful, wonderful
Yeah.
stuff that he
Again,
accomplished it. I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. I think he's going to do great things, So, but
yeah.
still,
To me, like, yeah, perhaps, like, again, if you're thinking about, like, if you have that right to earn a living and you want to, like, get into this business, maybe we don't need to have a barrier to entry for that business that is so high. Like, maybe we could lower it just a smidge, so that other people are able to make a living doing this thing, right? And again, you think that about the barbers and hairdressers and I know people are working with stuff, and if you want certification and you want to do it right and you want to go to a hairdresser, barber, etc., who has like a certificate that is beyond the licensing, because the other thing to remember, folks, is that like licensing in and of itself does not guarantee that that person is good at what they do.
that is true.
It
Man. That is
doesn't. Sorry, like
really
there's still other things that you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to look at the Google reviews. You're gonna have to look at, are they doing continuing education? Are they doing all the other stuff to make sure that they are still at the top of their profession? Like licenses isn't a substitute for the thing. It can be like, again, there are certain things that make sense, sort of like pilot licenses, for instance, in and of itself probably makes sense. Like you subtract.
arguably.
Now, are they going too far with that? Yes. Also, like it's actually a good thing that like Congress is maybe sort of kind of like considering like a bit of reform there to reduce the number of flight hours required before like pilots can get their license, because there's a shortage of pilots, commercial airline pilots, and you know the this is a way to relieve that. Like a lot of folks retired during COVID. Like they kind of just they took an early retirement, and now there's a shortage of commercial airline pilots, and it's really hard to train people up to get licenses. Now, the pilots are furious at the idea of maybe allowing more pilots in and lowering the hours, because one, they had to go through it, and
Imagine
two,
that.
there's more competition. The cost of pilots, like salaries of pilots have gone up a whole bunch, in part because they've artificially limited competition.
Sure.
So they don't like it, and so it's a safety thing. It's not always a safety thing. This is
not always.
it's
No.
a protecting a limited pool of employees thing for them. It's not a safety
Sure.
thing.
It's self-preservation, and I understand the point where they had to go through it, so shouldn't other people have to go through it?
Mhm.
That's a fair point, but not a fair point carrying through to the future forever. Okay,
And yeah, politicians have to consider what is best for the public at large versus what is best for this small group of people who are trying to protect their monopoly in an industry. Anyway,
government-inspired monopoly.
exactly. So anyway, we're coming up on break, and I see a couple other questions. We're gonna have to answer those in the break. So WYSL audience, make sure you listen to a podcast, subscribe to our podcast if you want to hear the in-between questions, or follow us online on YouTube, on Facebook, Tim O'Connor pages, Kevin Wilson pages. Follow us all over. But we're gonna head to break here on WYSL. We're gonna be back here on Free Solution in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. No, because Tim, I want to get to this question from Joe on YouTube. It says, what do you think about licenses that are built-in tax, like fishing licenses and hunting licenses? Do you think we should pay for them to maintain and put fish in the water? What do you think of that, Tim?
Well, arguably no, right? Like the issue is that I have always, this is a good one for a libertarian conundrum for me, because certainly places can get overfished. Certainly there can be a problem with people dumping crap into the water. And so it's kind of good to have an agency that's aware of those things and that proactively, like, look, you wouldn't be catching trout in a stream upriver from a mainstream ever if they weren't stocked practically yearly.
Yeah.
So there are certain advantages to it. But no, I don't think it's exactly right. And I think we've kind of, especially most places in upstate New York, we're not overfished anymore. We don't have that many people anymore. So it's not as big of a threat as it once was. But arguably, the Department of Environmental Conservation does some good things. I hate saying it, but it's kind of true, man. I get a little bit more challenged like when you have your own property and you have your own pond. Like, should you have a license to fish that? No, that's your problem. And then when you're hunting your own animals on your own land, also, should you be forced into a licensing relationship? Also, I'm
Yeah.
probably would say no. But when you're hunting public lands and fishing public streams,
Right.
I get it.
I mean, if like there's the concept of like the commons, right? Like, which isn't exactly the same as what it used to be back in the day, but like you could think of a lake or a pond as something like a commons too, or a stream, a river, when it comes to like fishing stuff, right?
Sure.
If you don't have some way of artificially limiting like how much is removed from that common resource, then there's a lot of incentive for people to just take as much as they possibly can because it ends up being sort of a zero-sum game, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like there's a name for it. It's called the tragedy of the commons, right? And then it's kind of a reason to like the ways you address it are either privatization, like you either like kind of segment off stuff, but for things that are difficult to privatize, then you either tax or limit or license how much you're able to take, so you don't totally deplete that resource, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I mean, some of it I know is a bit of a money grab, like I get it, but like that's in theory why we do like fishing licenses. So like I'm kind of okay with it. Like, and I say like the finer details, like we can quibble over, but like licenses for fishing and like public spots, I'm kind of fine with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like debatable. I know it makes me less of a purist libertarian, but eh, some of it's okay.
Yeah.
Some of it is okay.
Yeah. I used to get mad at fishing licenses because I used to do the full libertarian thing. I was no, that's ridiculous. We don't need those. Why should I, have my license to fish sold back to me by the government, right? Like that's the take I took on it. But
completely a point I understand as well. I want to be clear, like I get it. And certainly people will pay. Like if I say, hey, look, I've done a great job maintaining this property in such a way that there's abundant, amazing trophy fish and abundant, amazing deer. Will you pay me to come hunt here? People will. Now, should they have a license if we have that kind of arrangement where it's my private land that I've maintained for hunting and fishing purposes? Do they need a license there? Because they're willing to pay me. I'm curating the whole facility. I would say
yeah,
no, right? I would
no,
say that's
yeah,
a
right.
situation. If I go to Pennsylvania, hunt on a private preserve, should I have to buy a Pennsylvania license? No, I'm going to a private preserve that's already being maintained as a hunting preserve and a fishing preserve. So there's
Yeah.
this whole mixed bag.
Right.
Yeah,
No, I even remember like because I don't know. I feel like I always had my fishing license, so I never like even thought about it.
right.
Like if because I've been on like private ponds before, like I didn't even think about the legality of it because like I just had my license and I didn't like worry about anyone else. But
Yeah.
anyway, that is a good question, Joe. And it's like it's a different sort of thing, but I think it's worth discussing. So appreciate it. Appreciate the question. Appreciate the all the other stuff here
Yeah,
too.
Kelly's got one I want to deal with. Yeah,
Oh, good.
electricity's not, but Shelly put one up too.
Sorry.
That's
Go
all
ahead.
right.
Put up the Shelly one.
Yeah, let's do the Shelly one. If you have New York State and has really we've lost population. B, and there is an issue with deer. Okay, there's too many deer. They're underhunted now. They're basically a danger on the roads. I walk around, I see so many cars that are dinged up by obvious deer collisions that
Mhm.
we've undersold hunting and punished gun ownership and demonized certain aspects of rural culture that is now kind of like wrecking people's cars and wrecking people's property. I have beautiful hosta plants in my front yard, and the deer eat them. And
Yeah,
I
they're kind of a menace. Like
yeah,
really.
Somebody's got to come take care of them.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
too many
that's
deer in my neighborhood.
for real. And do that. I know. And I never got into deer hunting. I know.
It's a lot of work, man.
Yeah, no, it is. It's,
I've only done it a few times, and my friends all go crazy for it, and I'm kind of like, that's a lot of work, really. I'll be honest with you.
no, I mean, like, yeah, okay. So, all right, I'm gonna get up at like 4 in the morning, and I'm gonna sit out in the freezing cold, and then maybe sit out there for 6 hours, not get anything, or I get to,
It is almost universally cold during deer season too. So that's a
it's
big
gonna be
one.
freezing, and if I do get something, then I've got to go through the whole rigmarole of like, like getting that deer, tagging it, cleaning it, all that stuff.
Having
I don't know.
somebody butcher it for you, butchering it yourself. Either way, that's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
I
Yeah,
think
I guess.
solid
Yeah, I could have
project.
someone else butcher it, but still,
Yeah.
either way, yeah, maybe. But like, I'm open to it. I will eventually one day go hunting. I have no like moral objection to it. It's a pure laziness objection. That's
It's
it's
I'm
just
telling
like,
you,
it seems like a hassle. Like I don't know. I'm gonna get around to it.
I loved it. I loved doing it when I was younger. I used to do it like, 17, 16. I used to hunt like crazy. It would be my release, my get out of the house kind of thing. Um, but now that I'm older, it's like I taught my kid how to hunt. He's not a big fan of it, but he's capable. So got my like, well, I didn't even really have to teach him how to hunt. He kind of knows, and I taught him how to be proficient with guns and safe, so
Yeah.
it's a skill that is good to have.
So, so trap shooting. Well, I was doing sporting clays this weekend with my buddy. All right.
Nice.
Which was a lot of fun. If you've never done that, it's like a little bit different from like trap or skeet. Like you go to like this place had like 20 different stations down in Maryland. I was at, and each station has like the clays coming from a different direction.
Oh,
It's a
that's
lot of fun.
wild.
But him and I kept like kind of fighting because like my reflex when like handling a gun is like, okay, every time I am not firing a gun, safety's on, right?
Right. That'll kill
Every
you in
time.
that
And he's
game.
just like, he doesn't do that. And I'm like, dude, like every time, like, okay, I'm done shooting, safety on. And
Yeah, no, that's smart. It's
it's
safe.
like, it's not necessary. Like it's unloaded, the chamber's open. Like, yeah, I know, but also,
that's just the way I'm gonna do it.
yeah, exactly. It's like I don't even think about it just every time. But anyway, yeah. We should probably get back to the actual show.
We should. We definitely should.
So we'll go back at 33 and again, folks. So we're gonna talk about Hunter Biden next. We're gonna talk about Hunter Biden.
We've got to talk about Hunter Biden. He's the greatest, dude.
Oh man. All right. Good old Hunter Biden. All right, we're gonna head back to 33. Talk about Hunter Biden. I mean that would have been a good segue into the ridiculous news, but we're gonna talk about him. And then maybe Google, then the ridiculous news. So if you have anything in the meantime, all right, we're gonna go back in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and it is long past time for us to talk about the libertarian hero, Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden. Okay. What is libertarian hero Hunter Biden doing?
Well, like I guys, probably some of you that have been hanging out with Kevin and I long enough to know when Hunter made that plea deal for his gun charges that was eventually rescinded because it was either too ridiculous of a deal or the judge couldn't assure. There's a couple different takes on that, but regardless,
it was a fishy deal.
It was a pretty sweet deal. The judge kind of couched it in some words that I was wondering if there was truth to them. Like, well, we can't guarantee the immunity that you've been promised, and maybe this immunity is too broadly granted for this deal, and maybe you'll be able to carry it into some of your other problems, and we don't want to have that happen. So, anyways, they yanked that deal off the table. But now, and so back then, I said, well, geez, if he had challenged those charges on a Second Amendment basis, I thought he had some ground and some merit. And here we are. They reinstated the charges. And now the talk is, Kevin, he's going to fight these charges. His lawyer's been very straight up about it. He's going to fight these charges on a Second Amendment basis, especially in light of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. He thinks that they're going to file for a summary dismissal of the charges, and I think they should.
Because they don't want it to be challenged because they might. I mean, they might win, and the Biden administration doesn't want that. They'd rather lose this and let it go than end up having something go to the Supreme Court and expanding Second Amendment rights. But specifically, the thing that they would be challenging here is that it is illegal by federal law. It's a felony to own a gun, to purchase a gun, if you have ever like used a controlled substance, right? Which by federal law now it like still includes marijuana, right? That's still you are an unlawful user of a controlled substance if you have ever smoked weed, and therefore cannot legally purchase a firearm. Right. So and Hunter Biden, well, he wasn't. He was smoking crack, which is yeah. So which is a controlled substance. It is illegal under federal law. He was an unlawful user, and therefore he cannot legally purchase a firearm. So if they decide to challenge this case on those grounds, and part of the lawyer's like decision might be, I know Daddy's Justice Department is going to dismiss this for these reasons.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
Which, hey, fair, man. If lawyers are like that, that's what defense lawyers do, right? If they know the politics of the situation, and actually, it's not totally fair to the Justice Department. Like they're doing their own thing, and they have like a bit of independence from the president directly, but nonetheless, they still might let this go for that reason, because it would be interesting if it got challenged and it got argued in front of the Supreme Court. Is that still a necessary restriction on the right to self-defense? Should you lose your right to self-defense because you have ever used an illegal substance?
Okay, so arguably that's a great question, and should you lose any rights, and under what guise or what principles should you lose rights? And honestly, the only thing that I can come down to is committing violence and acts of incredible fraud that any of your rights should be suspended, right? So acts of violence and being addicted or being a user of drugs does not meet fraud or violence, right? So
yeah.
I want to be very clear about something. I think some of my friends may be disappointed in my open support for Hunter Biden and my disappointment in the Second Amendment.
You don't have to support Hunter Biden to think he happens to be right about this specific thing.
Rights are not for people that I like, right? Like
that's right.
Not,
exactly.
They're for people that I don't like. And you guys know that I hate the Biden family, that I think they're corrupt, that I think their corruption is legal, and that actually makes me sick, okay? But this is where we have to stand for what's right, okay? And period. That's where I'm at with the Hunter Biden.
That's what it is. Like again, like some of the toughest First Amendment, Second Amendment cases, like they're for the worst people. For people like it's the edge cases, right? Sure. Like that's what you have to stand up for. I'm like, because I'll say that like there's a bunch of First Amendment cases related to stuff like related to pornography and prostitution, and I might not personally care for some of that, but does it fall into the realm of the First Amendment? Yeah, sure. And then with the Second Amendment stuff like this, again, like, is it great that Hunter Biden was smoking crack? No, it's not. That's a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. And like you absolutely, if you're actively abusing a substance, like you should not be carrying a firearm. That's an irresponsible thing to do, right? But do I think that it should prohibit you possibly forever from being able to own a gun? No, of course not, right? And especially like you get this in libertarian circles occasionally, or in conservative circles, where they're like, well, the legalization of marijuana is just a method through which we can get gun control. Because,
it sure looks it sometimes, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, right. But because like, okay, if you are now on record, you have purchased marijuana with a credit card, then there's now a record of you purchasing a substance that is still illegal at the federal level. You are now an unlawful. There's a pretty good reason to suspect you're an unlawful user of a controlled substance, and therefore cannot own a firearm legally.
It's we've talked about it, you and I, and plenty of other people, but that the way that they've legalized marijuana looks very similar to a form of gun control. It certainly takes legal purchasers of marijuana out of the realm of gun ownership, and that to me is a real problem. So I want Hunter Biden to win this on a Second Amendment challenge, and I want him to win it on the principles behind the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association's Wynn versus Bruin, and that's what I would like to have happen. That's how I feel
Yeah.
about it. You know,
I'm going to take a small detour for this all caps comment on Facebook. It says, grow your own. Listen, that would be great, but there's a big problem with that. It's not legal to grow your own in New York yet. It's still not legal. And I know this because I might have it in front of me too. I got this letter from the city of Rochester that's like, hey, just a reminder, you can't grow marijuana in community gardens. And also, just a reminder, it's not legal to grow it for personal use in your gardens yet, because New York State hasn't created rules around it. So right now, New York State, it's not legal to grow your own marijuana plants because when the law was passed, they said, okay, and we're going to make up some rules around growing marijuana for personal consumption. And they haven't finalized those rules yet. And until they finalize those rules, it's not really legal to grow your own, which is the dumbest, most infuriating thing, because they could have just put that into the law. They could have just taken care of that already. But instead they're like, oh, this is just going to be illegal for a while until we like eventually get around to making some rules up for this.
It seems like we were just last week we were complaining about bureaucracies being created with authority to make up rules, and how that almost always invariably creates an authoritarian mess. They're either inefficient at making the rules are horrible, they're arbitrary, they're capricious, and it's an abrogation of legislative responsibility. And oh look, here we are again having the same conversation. They're just, hey, you're supposed to make rules. We didn't make the rules, so you can't really grow your own. I know a lot of people that are under the impression that it's complete. I don't know anybody, but I've heard of people that are under the impression that it's completely legal to grow your own.
Yeah, no, it's not really like they're for the most part, it's not really going to be enforced, I'd imagine. But yeah, no, it's
Wild.
yeah, and if you
Wild.
Google, like, I'll look at it, it says, please be aware that home cultivation of cannabis is not allowed immediately. Again, what they're saying is like, we're eventually going to get around to making these rules that are going to be structured around having like the up to 6 plants, 3 plants that are producing at one time, blah blah blah, right? It's a whole thing. But
Oh my
no,
God.
yeah, it's not exactly legal yet. It's more an intent to eventually make it legal. Is the rule? Which again, I thought it was legal for a while too, until I got this letter from the city that was like, oh
boy.
hey, by the way, you can't grow in your own backyard either.
That's
I had to look it up.
I'm so not surprised. I'm so not surprised that they haven't actually effectively legislated this situation. They haven't effectively used the Office of Cannabis Management to make effective rules. I read some opinion piece that based on all the challenges to the licensing regime in New York State, that even if people are open with a license, that there's a very reasonable possibility that that license is not legitimate. So this is just bizarro world. It was incompetence from the day one. New York State took an ownership position in every single kind of marijuana outlet through its licensing scheme. And look, it's been sued, I don't know, 5 times, 7 times with the licenses being granted, being put on hold. It's always been a mess, and that's a reality.
Yeah. No, it just and I was trying to find there's like a short FAQ from New York State on this I couldn't find. I found a DNC article about that thing. I know it's a slight detour. It's just so frustrating to me that like a bunch of people are under this impression. Oh yeah, they just legalized it. Great, cool. But no, you're double legal now if you're growing marijuana at home. You're breaking the law there, and you're not allowed to legally purchase a firearm anymore because you're going to be lying on a federal form, because when they ask you if you're a non-lawful user of a controlled substance or whatever the exact language is, you'd have to lie to do that if you consume marijuana, because it's still legal at the federal level for some ridiculous reason.
It's like this catch-22. They've got us coming and going. They're not going to stop because it's a successful strategy. And I don't know, like,
Yeah.
again, we get to this issue of how are we going to fix it? Let's not even go down that road, because that's just going to end up me whining about the current situation.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope on this front, Hunter Biden is successful, and only this front. Joe on YouTube says the only reason they're charging Hunter Biden with the gun charges is because it's literally the only charges that have absolutely nothing to do with his dad. It's a complete setup.
Really?
Yeah, maybe. You know, I got like initially I was like a little bit skeptical of some of this stuff, because I was like, I don't really see much related to Joe Biden, but like that's more and more it's starting to seem like there might be something there. It's enough to like look into, right? Like,
Right. And look, it would become an issue rapidly that okay, all of these things that we saw, if we don't have distractions and Hunter doesn't get punished for something, if we don't have distractions, that we would see that what they have done is absolutely corrupt, but may in fact be legal. And nobody is talking about making that system of selling influence and access to the US government illegal. No one's talking about it. They're talking about they shuffled the money the wrong way. They did it this, they did it that. It's like, make it illegal, man. Like, that's what we're talking about. That's what people want.
there's a lot of stuff related to Hunter Biden where it seems like, again, like why was he on the Burisma board? Like what qualifications do he have to be there? Why is he getting these like big gifts from like all these like foreign officials, right? Like, because there is some of the stuff where like he probably should have been a foreign agent, and in what ways has his connection to his father enriched him, right? And in what ways are those legal, and in what ways did Joe Biden have any influence on that? It's worth asking, because I think we had talked about one of the weeks where like it came out that Joe Biden had a few alias email addresses, which you kind of get. Like a lot of elected officials have these because they have like their public email address where everyone sends their email, and then they have like a second private email address where like they actually do business on, and you sort of get it, right?
Yeah, sure.
But also he had several of these, and he might have been doing some other stuff with them, and he didn't really disclose that he had these alternate email addresses. Okay, that's a little shady. Maybe it's nothing. Again, this is a thing that people do all the time, and I sort of like, I get logically why it happens. It's just it's a little bit weird if you're talking about business stuff with your son on one of these email addresses that you didn't disclose. Yeah, that's weird.
It's weird, man. It's weird. It's absolute, like, there's an absolute level of corruption here that, sure, we can dump it all in Hunter Biden's lap and pretend that Joe is innocent, but I'm not willing to do that. And regardless of how incompetent he is now, he was relatively shrewd, and at some points in his life, and certainly he's a political animal, 110%. So that's just how they do things in Washington, Kevin. That's how the rich men north of Richmond do things.
Yeah, that's how it goes. All right. Well, we are running out of time on the radio segment, folks. Thanks, WYSL audience, for joining us. We're going to have to take a quick break, and we're going to be back here on A Free Solution in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah, I hope I brought that home well enough. Like, I don't like Hunter Biden. I don't like Joe Biden. I don't think they're good people. But this issue is again, it's a rights issue. And if rights are rights, and this is where I think people get sideways. And I was kind of going around on Twitter making fun of like Matt Walsh because he sounded like a communist and stuff like that. And I got a couple people pretty upset with me. And that was the intent anyway.
He probably deserved it.
Yeah, no, I did deserve it. I was being really obnoxious. Like, hey, that sounds kind of communist, bro. You know, because it's like obviously a pro 2A guy who probably has 50 guns in his house. And he's like, oh, I can't wait till they get this guy. He shouldn't have lied on a federal form. And I'm like, you've never smoked pot. You've never drank beer. Like, I mean, what are you asking for? Like, think this through, pro 2A guys, NRA guys. Think this through. First of all, the NRA is not the one leading the charge on this. There's plenty of gun agencies that will handle this as a rights issue. And look,
and again, like it comes down to like, because the NRA would never do this. They would never jump in and write like a brief supporting Hunter Biden because it would be too politically toxic for them. Because
Right.
they're like Republicans, but like there's several other gun rights organizations that would, they would see this as like their version of, I mean, it's not quite this extreme, but like the Skokie case, for instance, like the ACLU did not agree with the Nazis who were marching down the
No,
street, but they're like, we got to defend these guys because like they are exercising a fundamental right. They're being jerks about it. They are terrible people, but the right is still important. And I imagine that there's a lot of gun groups who like won't jump in to say like, hey, maybe Hunter Biden is a jerk and a terrible person and corrupt and all these other things, but on this thing, like that, we probably should challenge this unjust rule, and he's a good high profile way to do it.
And look, again, he's accused of corruption, which is a form of fraud. Fine, okay. If he gets convicted, and then you want to limit his rights to some things, fine. That's different. He's not been convicted of anything violent. Sure, there's allegations that are based on what people have found on his computer. I get it, but he still hasn't been convicted of anything. And that seems to be a premise that we've lost in society. And call me crazy, called me old fashioned, but it was a better time when we used to think of people as presumed innocent. It's the OJ trial, Kevin. Ever since the OJ trial, we've been on this downhill run.
Oh boy. You're gonna try to talk about Russell Brand, aren't you?
No, but that is ridiculous news
Jesus.
and it would fit.
Yeah, no, I figured that might come up on the ridiculous news side, but we'll see. That's
Sure.
about bottom of the barrel ridiculous news.
It's
Uh,
it's it's a it's hard to take there's a problem there, and one of the problems is that when these allegations come out years later and they target a guy who's gone hardcore anti-establishment, who is still like leans liberal and still leans socialist, Kevin, like he's still that guy, but he is so convinced that the system is broken and corrupt and has been pushing that for months now. Now all of a sudden these things surface and it just
Tim, I'm pretty sure I rolled my eyes so hard that it's gonna get picked up on my nice mic. Um, but yeah, no, maybe we'll talk about that. Like maybe that's an after show thing.
yeah, we've got some plenty of we got to do a little bit on the Reason article that you presented about the big government taking on Google. We've got to do a little bit on that, and then we've got to do some ridiculous news because we've got to get this. The one that I've got for you that has to get on air for the WSL audience because they're gonna love it.
Yeah, but it's a David. Yeah, we'll talk about Russell.
Sure, we should.
But probably after the main show.
Yeah,
Yep. So anyway, we'll go back. We'll go back in a few seconds. I'm just writing down my time, and I think, but we want to talk about the Google stuff. We'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about the some of the other ridiculous news that's out there. Whatever Tim has plus maybe I don't know. We'll dress codes and all the shenanigans of members of Congress.
Oh yeah,
that way.
Boobert.
Boobert.
Boobert. Lauren Boobert.
All right. We're going to go back in 5, 4, 3. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, yours for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. And look, you guys know we're here to solve the biggest problems facing the world today. And right now, I'm about to endorse an act by the Biden administration where they are going to take Google and break it up into 1 million tiny little Googles that we each get our own Google. Is my basic interpretation of that correct, Kevin?
I mean, I think that the scale of what they're trying to accomplish may be like a smidge smaller. Although I have seen people unironically make that argument before. Actually, I had someone as a guest on the show who thought that like Facebook and Google should be legitimately broken up into the all of its constituent parts. Sahar made that argument, but go back and look at the archives. Look up Sahar. He made the argument about Facebook and other things. But what the DOJ is saying specifically related to Google is that they are a monopoly because Google has a overwhelming majority of the search market, and they are solidifying that with collusion with other mega corporations, Apple specifically. They
Mhm.
are going to be the default search engine for Apple. And the reason why Apple wants to do this is because people like Google's product. It's a good product, people like it, and they want to use it. But the DOJ says no, that's not acceptable. Just because, I mean, again, any of us can log into our computer anytime, and you could choose from many different search engines, right? You can choose Google, you can choose Bing, which is actually increasing a little bit in terms of their share of the market. You can choose
Sure.
DuckDuckGo, which is also sort of related to Bing. You can choose Yahoo Search, which I think also might be related to Bing. And then there's a couple others too out there. There's some actually independent ones, right?
Yeah.
But most people still end up choosing Google because they like it.
Yeah.
Tim, what do you say about that? Is it okay for people to like a product and for there to be a natural preference for a good chunk of the market to go to one company?
Yeah, there is. And I think that in as I read through this case, one of the issues is who they're trying to protect, because I think that we all benefit from Google, and if we want to be proficient enough and find workarounds for Google, because they certainly do spam you with their advertisers, and they certainly do
Hey,
occasionally
hey,
bury relevant.
provide valuable connections to local businesses through
Right, that's what
advertising.
I meant to say. Did I say that wrong? Anyway, we're not here to advertise for Google, man, but, like, they do some things with their search engine that seem at the very least manipulative. They certainly bury, counterfactual stories to what I would call the media narrative, um, and they get money from ABC, NBC, stuff like that to push their product. So, yeah, I have problems with some of the things that Google does, but also my primary search engine is Google. My favorite search engine on my phone is a Chrome-based thing. So
It works well. And like
it
the
works. Yeah.
argument from the DOJ is like, oh well, like it's because like it has to be the default, right? Like it's like everyone is like kind of forced into this choice. But again, 91% of the search market is Google. Like it's a huge amount. You
Mhm.
have other choices. In fact, if you're using a Windows computer, and many of you are, like the first browser you get is probably going to be Edge. And what's the first thing you're going to do with Edge half the time? You're going to download Chrome. Sorry, like I know how it is. Like that's what a lot of people do because they just like it better. If you want to
Yeah.
use Edge, use Edge. Do your thing, right? Like it's fine. It's actually gotten a lot better recently. Or use Bing. They got the Chat GPT integration in there. I think honestly it works as well. It's a little bit different. It works as well as Google's trying their own AI assisted search product that I'm in like one of the beta categories for. But um you as the consumer have this choice. And the thing to always keep in mind about these things is like let's go back to the browser thing, right? Right now, like Chrome, it has a huge majority of like the browser usage. But at one point in time, it was Internet Explorer, right? At one point in time, in fact, there was another lawsuit that tried to challenge the monopoly of Internet Explorer, right? Because it was so dominant on the market. And they were saying that, well, because Microsoft is putting this product, their browser, on the computer, they are creating an unfair advantage for accessing the internet. And that's why there's an overwhelming preference for this browser. Even though you could at the time get Netscape, and then a little later on things like Mozilla, which is still around and still active, and you could choose that choice now. But these things switch.
Yeah.
Like there's suddenly Google might, because that's what people were talking about a few months ago, is like, hey, maybe Google's not going to be the preferred search engine anymore if Bing really does well with this AI product, and consumers can switch on a dime.
Yeah.
There's
And
no there's
actually
no
I
cost to
I
switching.
right, I have two browsers on my computer, and they're open all the time because Google, my Chrome browser, does not facilitate my multi-account use on Twitter. Whereas Firefox is very friendly to me having several identities and rotating back and forth in between them. For some reason, Chrome doesn't allow me to do that. Doesn't I've been signed in on both my Twitter accounts, and I can't toggle back and forth. But on Mozilla, the Firefox app, I can. So I have that as an alternate browser, and occasionally I use that to search for things. And then I'll cross-reference my search against what I see on Google if I have time or I'm trying to find a validity of a news story, things like that. Um, and see to get out of the Google 10 deep advertisers, because that is what they do, though. They are raking in the money that way, which is
No,
fine.
all right. It's 2 to 3, and I only say this is because this is what I do for a living. Is
Okay.
I create Google ads for folks.
And I exaggerate for a living, so that's
No,
fair.
you do. This is infotainment. That's what it is. That's what we're
Mhm.
doing. But like I'll say, like I get it. I get people who are frustrated with the ads. But the thing is, if you don't like the ads, just skip over them, right? But sometimes the ads are exactly what you like are looking for, and it might be a good fit because Google won't show ads they're not supposed to show ads that are irrelevant to whatever you're searching for, right? They consider that a low quality ad. They don't show it.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to show it. But you know,
So
I get sometimes they're annoying. But if you want to go down to the organic search results, do your thing. But every search engine is going to do that in some sort of way. Again, like even search engines like DuckDuckGo, they do that too. And basically you buy DuckDuckGo ad inventory by buying it through Bing. Like that's the
right.
yeah.
So
And the difference with DuckDuckGo specifically is that they don't track your usage, right? So it's purely like you search for this thing, the results and the ads that show are based on you searching for that thing. Whereas on
yeah.
Google, they'll be like, okay, listen, we're going to bid a little bit more on this guy because he's searching for watches and he visited like 10 watch websites like an hour ago.
He's gonna buy
that
one.
that bit's going to be, that click's going to be more expensive for the advertiser. We're going to show this up top.
Right. Okay. I get it. So look, the thing is as I read this, it doesn't really read like a classic antitrust thing where they're going to break Google up anyway. It feels like they're going to try to benefit, let's say, Bing, perhaps, like
Yeah.
drive more people, like force Google to give up some of their customer base to an app like Bing. And that's like saying, hey, we have this major behemoth over here, but like we have this other guy who's also a major behemoth.
Here's a like slightly smaller behemoth.
Yeah, but we
and
like him. So you
and like we will feel better if it's like 5 behemoths splitting this market rather than like one taking up the majority and then like 30 or 40 like
right. They're propping up Bill Gates like this. Okay, I didn't want to say it that way, but that's what this
all right.
looks like.
Bill Gates is involved
because he's friendly to everybody in the political world and was obviously at Epstein Island like 1,000 times. So he's all hung out with these guys. So like that's the thing. That's what they're doing. They're paying off Bill Gates, and that's the reality. That's what this is all about.
Dave, they love fake duopolies.
Speaking of monopolies, I still think we should sue the Democrat and the Republican Party as a uniparty and monopolizing our elections. We just needed like a benefactor, major money.
Yeah, that's if any of you out there have a few $1 million, maybe like probably at least 7 digits to burn on a lawsuit, like we'd appreciate
we could
it.
Definitely not win, but man, would we make a point?
It won't get covered anywhere, but like libertarian media, but
Reason would have our backs. The Cato Institute would have our backs. It would be awesome.
Yeah.
So, arguably, I feel like we're running. Are we running out of time? Because
you really like 5 minutes left. We got a little bit left. Wait, you got some ridiculous news. Is that what you're going to jump into?
Yeah, I'm very excited, Kevin. I'm very excited for the state of New York to reap the whirlwind of benefits from the Inflation Reduction Act, and Rochester in particular. Kevin, you guys out there in WYSL land have a $3 million grant coming from the federal government from the Inflation Reduction Act, guys. Plant trees. $3 million. $75 million. Chuck Schumer is aglow. He is out there bragging this up. He's like, we have something. I may be paraphrasing and I might misquote him, but $75 million worth of inflation fighting trees coming to a neighborhood near you. That I can't wait, Kevin. It's epic. It's epic.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I think I was just talking about a podcast I was talking about trees in Rochester like last week too. And then right after this, like the guy they interviewed for the podcast and did a story about trees in Rochester. Like, oh yeah, we're getting all these trees now because of my reporting and Malik Evans and stuff. Yeah, so we're getting $3 million worth of trees in Rochester, which is cool. I like trees. It's great. You know, I'm fine with more trees. It's weird that it was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. Like that's the weird part to me. Like what
I
why
can't.
like what on earth does that have to do with inflation reduction? Like if you want to have like a like you know they could probably come up with a great acronym for this. I'm sure like Cool Our Urban
Yeah.
like something, but like I bet it could be like could or something. Or
Like,
cool. Like I bet they could come up with a cool acronym to like fund the trees, and
yeah.
like I'd probably still be like, we don't need to spend money
Look,
on
you
this at the
you
federal
you know
level.
how
But what? Why in this bill? Why? Like, what does this have to do with anything?
well, it has to do with I, honestly, this is another example of grift, right? Like where BlackRock has a company that pivots from providing masks and vaccines on demand to helping migrant services. It's like, oh, now we can find a way to get no bid contracts for planting trees in Rochester. We need to pivot our focus to no bid contracts for planting trees. This is an example of, I want to say, well, it's a virtue signal. I have a tenth of an acre. I have 9 big, huge trees on my property. If someone wants one and they can figure out how to dig it out of the ground, I'd be welcome
What's the
for them to have it. I have too many trees. I have a surplus.
what's the problem? It's so my area there's trees on my property, but there aren't a lot of trees in my like area because there's no space for them. There's no like green space on my part of the sidewalk, so it's all open and it gets really hot, right? And you get the 90
Sure.
degree days, and then there's a lot of low income neighborhoods where there are just not a lot of trees, right? There's either people cut them down or they're damaged, or like the city never bothered planting any or whatever. Like
Yeah, or they
cool,
died
like
from salt.
the city
Yeah.
should plant those in like 30 years, you know, and I'm not exaggerating it. You're going to have enough trees for shade, right? Like, cool, great, do that. Like, I'm fine with that. Those are things that cities should do. Uh, it's weird that the federal government is put this in the IRA in the Inflation Reduction Act. Like, it's just that's the
Um,
part that gets me. Like, I'm fine with cities like spending some money to plant trees in like the public right of way.
yeah, sure.
Because yeah, the stuff gets hot in the city, right? If you have no trees around and it's just all like asphalt, it's just
It's like a political re-election campaign, right? Because green stuff is the rage right now. And why is it part of the Inflation Reduction Act? Because that didn't really have anything to do with inflation reduction other than making poor people poorer and lowering their ability to consume and giving them trees in return so that their virtue is served. That,
yeah.
in
Yeah.
my humble opinion.
All right. All right. So we got like 30 seconds left, and I'm gonna end this with the acronym that I thought of. Cool our urban land deciduously, as in deciduous trees. The Could Act. That's the act to fund the trees. Don't put it in the Inflation Reduction Act. Put it in the Could Act.
Put it,
Um,
start a nonprofit
to,
tomorrow.
yeah, well, it's fine. Yeah, so you can do that. There are plenty of nonprofits. There's
You've got the acronym for it.
yeah. There are options out there. I'm just saying it didn't have to be this way. We didn't have to waste money on the federal level on this thing. Rochester could have decided on its own, which it already did. It already put like $1.5 billion towards trees or something like that. And
I hope
that's
they're
fine.
nice trees.
Yeah, hopefully they are. I hope they're nice, great, shady trees. I like shady trees in my neighborhoods.
Like saplings that die from, road salt. So good
Yeah,
luck.
well, you gotta start somewhere. So Tim, I don't know if you know this, but some trees they start out as little babies.
I
And they
know.
grow big and
I
strong.
know. So you're hoping for big, huge, shady trees. You know you're not getting that.
I mean, like by the time I'm retired, I will get shady trees.
Yeah, good luck with that, man. I don't
Yeah,
know.
if no one chops them down or crashes into them where the salt doesn't kill them.
That's
All
right.
right, but we got to go on the radio show. Thanks, WYSL audience, for being here. If you want to keep listening to more on A Free Solution, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep doing a podcast. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you follow us. Thanks again for listening. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
Did you
All
see
right.
that in acronym?
Fund our owl layers.
Ooh.
Ooh.
That's the trees. Fund our
Yeah.
owl layers.
They're like, I both love and hate stupid legislation acronyms.
I Love Puppies Act. We're
Yeah.
going to give nuclear weapons to Ukraine. You know, like what?
Exactly.
What?
Just name it something innocuous and it's fine. So just to address David's thing right here, like making poor people feel better, natural solve problem. Again, I'm legitimately pro trees. And again, the reason why is just like if you're living in a city and you're somewhere like there's bus stops around, you can either like you can build a shelter like they did in LA that's completely
That was
useless and
awesome.
spend $10,000 on it, or you can
Yeah.
plant trees, right? Like trees work great for that. Trees, like they do cool the neighborhood a lot when you have cooler neighborhoods. Like again, that podcast I referenced, like, isn't totally wrong that higher temperatures do correlate with higher levels of violence. Like
Sure.
people are hot, they're cranky, like more likely to have
If
impulsivity. And
if only there were a way to plant trees without a $75 million grant from the federal government.
yeah, and that's the point. Okay, I'm not against the trees. I'm against the government spending $3 million to virtue signal about something that probably could have been done for tens of thousands of dollars. Like there's a cost to a tree, and the plant saplings that are gonna like survive. They're like hardy enough to survive when you
Yeah,
plant them,
I mean,
right?
you
But
knock out a sidewalk thing, you put in some topsoil, boom, tree. It's happy. Goes right after your water main, though. It's going to crack them right open.
I always do that. But he said, David says, "Oh, me too, 100%. I just think it's really important to have. I shouldn't have put the quotes in it because it really does work. It does work. Again, trees is a great way to cool things down.
You can be pro-tree and anti-government, guys. I don't
Yeah, that's
understand
what,
the problem there. Like,
no,
relax.
there's no problem. That's what I'm clear. Like I'm not against trees. Like I live in a neighborhood. I live in an urban environment. I'm even fine with the city getting involved in that because a lot of that is like it's publicly owned sidewalks and stuff, right?
Yeah,
And they've got to manage it because like the city's got to manage if the tree is like hanging over power lines, which RG&E manages, or like it is going and cracking the water mains or interfering with the street, they've got to maintain it, right? But
right.
yeah, I generally I don't
So
know.
look, here's why I hate the city and trees. Like, Oneana wanted trees. They got trees. They took car parking spaces in the downtown city of Oneana, the easy in, easy out style of pull in and leave. And look, the trees are nice. They're there. They're shade for the homeless people that they've managed to attract. That's great. All of those are good things, but we still lost a lot of parking for not a lot of trees. And the buildings are actually pretty tall and cast a lot of shade. So I don't know, man.
Kim, just ride the bus. I don't know what you're whining about.
That and then there's we have a lot of trees, Kevin, in my area. Like we have farms falling into the ground. There's trees like growing up through old barns. Like there's trees everywhere. Just just everybody relax. Go dig up a tree and plant it. Like I said, it's a very easy process to like knock out a sidewalk, a chunk of sidewalk, just one square, plop in
Well,
some
see, Tim, you're
topsoil,
forgetting that you have
plant
to
a tree.
do like the environmental review, and
Oh
that
yeah.
takes 6 months,
Yeah, layers.
and like $100,000,
Yeah.
and
I wonder how many trees we're gonna end up getting for $75 million once all the studies are
like
done,
15 trees.
once all the permits are pulled, once you hire professional arborists to plant the trees, once you hire a construction company to come in, knock out that sidewalk, build some sort of retaining wall so we get a proper depth topsoil for the trees. Like it's gonna be epic. We're gonna
Just
get like
yeah, we
9
just need
trees.
people to do some like guerrilla tree plantings. That's
Oh, that would be wild.
what we
Do it.
need. Like that, like just like the. I mean, I know it's actually like a thing like that people do too. But like just like the pothole fillers and like
Yeah.
the people painting lines and stuff without permission. Just go make your city a nicer place, right? That's
Anarchists.
yeah, exactly.
They throw guys like that in jail, Kevin.
They do. They will happily throw you in jail for providing a community service that they were supposed to provide by spending a
and,
bunch of money on their friends.
and failed. So the Boobert thing, what do you think? I just
Oh my god.
that in there, man.
Yeah, so congressional representative Lauren Boebert. I know, like again, like the people on like both sides of this are like taking it like way too seriously.
Oh my God, right?
And like I saw them just like laughing about it. I was like, this is dumb, this is trashy. But like you have to laugh like, oh my goodness, this is so unbecoming of a member of Congress, and I am shocked that we've stooped to these lows. I'm like, all right, Democrats, calm down. Like I guarantee, like another Democrat has done something like this. It is trashy. It's not great.
Oh, hold on.
Calm down.
They've got a Democrat representative who they have been regularly showing her OnlyFans account where she does
Right.
explicit entertainment.
Which fine.
And she's
if you
been
want-
elected to
but it's not in a theater, in a public venue. For goodness sakes, you got to pay to do that.
just
Like, she has some decency. No, I mean, like, it is trashy though. Like, it's like they weren't in a movie theater. First of all, like people like, oh, you've never made out with someone in a movie that they weren't making out. They were not in a movie theater. They were not in an empty movie theater. It was in a very crowded like theater. They're watching like Beetlejuice the musical.
Right.
They're getting
Beetlejuice. That's all I can say.
Yeah, they were getting quite handsy. And she was vaping the whole time too.
Look, whatever she's going through, whatever she's wrestling with, that's her problem. I think arguably she's effective on certain issues that I like, and she's ineffective, and she's I think where people are getting upset with her is there's a level of hypocrisy because she's kind of a religious cultural warrior type person, and they're feeling so. People on both sides, the left saying what a hypocrite and the right saying, oh my God, you're making us look bad. And it's like, for me, it's like, I wish she didn't screw over her family for some dude in a movie theater, like that would be a better thing. But like, also mostly it's none of my
she's been like had been going through a separation is what it was.
Sure. No, and that I get, look, marriage is at best, temporary for a lot of people, and that's fine, so I don't have a major amount of judgment. I get the angle where people are attacking her for being a hypocrite. I really do.
Right. Well, because like basically she's like, oh, we can't allow drag queen story hours and stuff because that's obscene, but then she's like in a theater in a family environment,
I mean
that
exactly, kind of,
right. Well, that's the argument anyway.
Sure. For the most part, when I find things hilarious, I find things hilarious, and I found this particular one hilarious, especially like I don't know if you know who 3 Year Letterman is on Twitter.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
Dude's he's a riot, and he's like, I think that this is a violation of their HIPAA, and I actually got in early on that one, and I said, yeah, this is so disgusting. I've watched this video over and over again, and it was like, so I got a huge amount of likes for that. Then the occasional like, wow, that's really creepy. And I'm like, like some people just don't seem to get the joke, no matter how many people are telling a joke around,
No, so. Man, that person, like they're always trolling. They get so many folks with that stuff.
Yeah, and what David says here too is this is definitely.
I was gonna make fun of people like this. I'm sorry, David. No, it's weird. No, like you're not 15. Sorry, she's like a 35-year-old woman. Like
I'm with you. I don't know. Kevin is a prude. It's not my fault.
No, it's weird that a bunch of conservatives like, oh come on, like you haven't done this in the theater, like not in my 30s.
No,
sorry, like no, like it's not in a crowded theater. No, sorry, like I'm not gonna do that. It's not a cool thing to do.
I get stuck seeing both sides of every point, and it hurts my head. And this is just one of those things where it's like I can't really take a side.
Like again, like should she go to jail or something for it? No, of course not. Like, does the theater have a right to kick her out, like because she was making people uncomfortable and her and her date? Yeah, like they do.
Kicked out for vaping, not for that.
Well, people were also complaining about that too.
Yeah, apparently. If she got kicked out, it was because she was vaping, and she denied that she was vaping, and then there she was right on the video, like right in the movie theater. So that to me actually is an invasion. That's an act of aggression. That's the worst part. That's the worst thing that bothered me the most about it was that she actually vaped in other
vaping in theaters. And David said I was defending, but comparing the Pride Parade or a drag queen story hour is ridiculous. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit different, I suppose, but like, still, like, you're in a public place. It's weird.
Regardless, it's hilarious, and it proves one of the theorems that I have, and that these people that are purportedly running the country are just like you and I, a bit lucky, a bit more aggressive, and that's a reality. Like that's who they are. There's nothing that special about them other than they get rich selling favors.
She's one of the people.
Yeah,
she's just like any other wine mom.
Yeah. They're so human. It's disgusting.
No. Speaking of very human members of our elected class, they're changing the dress code for the Senate. Or at least if you're a member.
What a
Mostly to accommodate Senator Fetterman, I suspect,
sure.
or at least everyone has suspected. And it's he has his signature look. He wears his like basketball shorts and hoodie, and that's kind of what he does. And
Yep.
so it used to be the case that you had to be like it was business attire to be on the floor of the House and the Senate, or in the Senate specifically in this case, in order to vote, right?
Yeah.
And if like you were coming off a flight and you weren't dressed, like you could kind of like stand half in the coat room, half in the on the floor apparently and vote that way, and it didn't violate the rules. This is like workarounds for emergency situations, but in a normal business situations, you should dress up, right? How do you do? How are you on this? Are you 100% pro, 100% against, or are also laughing at this?
Well, yeah, I'm absolutely laughing at it. My favorite thing about John Fetterman, by far, second to none, is in fact the way he dresses. Like that's my favorite thing about the guy. Like none of his opinions have value to me. None of his grandstanding that he's been doing lately has value to me. I am concerned that he's somewhat incapacitated for the job, but that's actually Pennsylvania's problem. And it's an issue that maybe we should deal with as a society. But like my favorite thing about him is the way he dresses. Like I have, and Kevin, I think you probably know this. I have zero respect for those people, and Fetterman actually shares a vibe about that. Like he's not offering that system any respect, and that
Mhm.
to me is okay. Even though he's a left wing psychopath that is literally crazy, fine. I like the way he dresses.
No, it's fine. I'm fine with it too. Like, all right, like he wants to dress comfortable. Like, I don't know. Again, I chalk it up to the same thing. Yeah, you should probably dress nice when you're on the floor of the Senate. Like, but if you're like you are, and you think that we put these institutions on a pedestal far more than they need to be, and there needs to be some like they need to be taken down a little bit, then yeah, no, I get that. But yeah, I'm mostly with you on it. I'm mostly like just kind of laughing at it, like this is just another fight of the day thing, and I don't really have all that much invested in whether or not you should wear a suit on the Senate floor, and if he wants to wear basketball shorts, the people of Pennsylvania can decide if that's trashy or not.
Yeah, yeah, and so a part of me would be happy if they decided to not elect because they won't take on any of his serious issues. If they decided not to reelect him because he dresses poorly, I would be very happy. That would be at least they took that much interest in their political sphere that they made a proactive decision.
Right, exactly. Will
So
they
that would,
do that?
I don't know, but yeah, what about the F-35? That's just
The
kind of
F-35.
disappeared, bro. It's just gone.
Yeah, no, but well, they found it. They found it.
Okay.
They did end up finding the F-35. But yeah, because it's a weird situation. Like, because the way I understood it was like the pilot had ejected, but the autopilot was still on, so the plane kept flying, and they couldn't quite find the plane because it's like a stealth aircraft, and then they were just kind of like they're freaking out about it, which is I don't know. Again, it's also kind of funny. I don't know.
I mean, yeah,
It's a waste of a lot
it's
of money.
definitely kind of funny. We have a $100 million plus airplane. There was a great like calling this guy a king because they were like, "Hey, when are you gonna land this?" And he's like, "Well, I wasn't planning on landing it." And he ejected, like
Yeah.
famous last words. I don't know if any of that's true, but
And
it's kind of epic.
yeah, but and I found it in South Carolina and found the debris.
Would
So the
have been
plane did crash.
it would have been so much better if they didn't find it. Would have
It's
been
just,
so much
just a
more
name.
interesting.
Well, I mean, like so many great memes came out of this because there's all the memes of it on Facebook Marketplace. It's not,
Yeah, $80 million, slightly used.
yeah, no ejection seat. Otherwise, in good shape.
Yeah, well, that's one of the strengths of society is its meme game. Like we're on these things right away now.
Yeah, exactly. Now, just like instantly, like the moment the story broke, memes everywhere about this.
Yeah,
Uh, but so I don't know what the meme of the month will be. I just saw a chart for that, and I think they put out the meme of the month as the aliens shown in Mexico. But
yeah.
man, there's a lot of competition this week.
There, it was a tough week. This week though has so far been slightly less tyrannical than last week, so we've got that going for us.
Well, thank goodness.
Yeah.
All right, and sure. Are we gonna talk about the Russell Brand thing?
I arguably I would like to get my views out there about it. One of the particularly offensive things about this whole situation is, and you and I have joked about it in the past, but like ever since the OJ trial, sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face with my own humor here. But like seriously, we get to this point where people are convicted in the media before like any kind of due process, before any kind of like rational examination of the evidence. And so what I like about Russell Brand, and he's actually a person that I started listening to when I started listening to podcasts. And guys, you know how long ago I started listening to podcasts besides my own?
Back when he was defending like Che Guevara and
No, I started listening to podcasts like you talked me into listening to Behind the Bastards, right? And so I'm like,
who that guy is actually a communist.
Yeah, no, he's a total communist.
He puts out a good product though.
Some of his podcasts are horrible. Like I don't really like Ron DeSantis. I think he's an authoritarian psychopath, and he's not nice enough to be interesting, and he's not edgy enough to like bring attention from me to him. So he's too authoritarian. He's come up with some weird ways of he flip-flop on his position on Ukraine. He's done some things that I think he's just kind of lost any kind of credibility with the anti-establishment sentiment that's going around the country. Where was I going? Russell Brand. Okay. Yeah. So I started listening to Russell Brand somewhere around the time I started listening to Behind the Bastards, which is just a couple months ago. Yeah. And I found him probably the first time I listened to him, he was talking to Tucker. And I'm like, all right, this guy is, well, he's kind of a commie. Okay. All right, but like whatever. Then he's kind of like also calls into question the narratives. He's talking about decentralizing, a decentralization revolution. And as you know, I'm not opposed to talks about decentralization. So, and Russell Brand is wildly funny. Okay. So as his popularity grows and he gets progressively more anti-establishment, it seems weird to me that a pile of allegations come out and then, YouTube demonetizes them and, the typical things that happen when cancel culture gets sicked on you. So that's my take on it. I don't know. And as always, I'm open-minded and I want to hear other people's takes on it. So what do you think?
Yeah. So my general take is like, I'm not a fan of Russell Brand. I've listened to a couple of his things, but like, to me, he's a bit more incoherent in terms like he's like, I find him kind of rambly, right? Like he's all over the place. He's not really making solid arguments. Like I can't follow what he's trying to say. No, so like, if I'm trying to like find someone who's like a ardent critic of like the establishment in the way that he is, like I think there are better folks out there to find, right? So just I'm not generally a fan. I don't listen much to his stuff because I find him kind of annoying to listen to. Yeah. But that all that does not matter, right? Like his beliefs doesn't matter, right? Like so it's this accusation thing. The thing about this is like I am neither like saying yes 100% this thing happened, nor am I like turning my brain off and saying like because he criticized the establishment he is therefore innocent. And I think there's a little bit too much of that going on. Like just a little bit too much of like, oh, like he's saying views that I agree with and going after the establishment. Therefore, this must be something rigged up by the establishment, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you definitely don't play the conspiracy theorist like I do. I get it.
No, right. Like because it is possible to be against the establishment in some legitimate way and also do shitty things, right? Like, and Russell Brand, like, it's this type of accusation is not exactly new for him. Like, he's had like there's been other kind of rumors of stuff that have gone around,
Okay.
right? And like it doesn't end up as big because like in the UK, like they have a lot stricter libel laws and people are less likely to say stuff out in public, but it's kind of been like a thing for him for a while. He has a bit of a reputation as a creep, apparently. Again, I don't
Okay.
know how true that is or not true. And then there's also in the investigation they had text message that basically like a woman's like, hey, I said no, like what the hell, like I'm kind of paraphrasing like the exact quote. I don't
Sure.
have the article in front of me, and he's like, oh yeah, sorry, right? So there's like some text messages where like someone from years ago after like some incident happened was like accusing him of sexual assault or rape, and like there's a written documented conversation of that happening.
Okay.
So like it's which could still not mean that he is guilty of what he is being accused of now, but like
Sure.
it's not nothing.
It could mean he's a creep, right? Or he's
Could mean
had
he's a
at least
creep. I mean, he
creepy
like
episodes.
definitely like slept with a 16-year-old, which is legal in the UK apparently, and like it's which is
Still
gross.
creepy. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's still
not
creepy.
illegal there, but creepy. But so like he might be a creep. Like that's the
Sure.
thing is like there's like some other stuff there where like he might be a creep, right? And again, I'm not invested in him as like a podcaster or anything emotionally, so I'm kind of looking at it like I don't. If he did something cool, let the legal system sort it out, or well, not cool, but and if he didn't do something, then okay, then he's gonna go back and probably sue these people if he gets found innocent and he can prove that this is like libelous or whatever, right?
Sure.
Um, like I'm gonna let the legal system work it out. I don't like to me like I don't feel like I need to like really weigh in on this like with a definitive yes or no answer on here because I don't know. I don't exactly know. I know the story. I know what I've seen, and we'll see like what the actual legal system does with it. And again, whether or not it's just for YouTube to demonetize them, I don't know, man. They're a private company. They make arbitrary decisions, and I think like we're well aware of the fact that if you're on YouTube, they might make an arbitrary decision to demonetize you if that's where you get your income, right? Like
Yeah, no,
doesn't make it right. It's just that's the world we live in now.
sure. And I'm a big fan of like YouTube has the big chunk of the market, right? So I'm a big fan of anybody that's stepping up and trying to challenge YouTube. And one of the things that Russell Brand does regularly is um, make fun of YouTube. He does short stints on YouTube and then tries to pull everybody over to Rumble. So at some point, if I was YouTube, I would have deplatformed him anyway, right? Like I would have
Right.
just said, "Hey, you know what? All right, this is any excuse is good enough. This is it." Because he's literally trying to drag people away from YouTube to go to Rumble, and I find that to be fun. I find that to be a good way to challenge what I perceive to be some sort of hegemonic, almost semi monopoly that YouTube has, um, where information does get controlled by them, and I certain things that I think are valid discussions got blackballed by them, and so I'm glad to see a competitor and Russell Brand taking on YouTube is great, and then YouTube automatically demonetizing them. I hope that hurts YouTube on some level. You know what I mean? Like I guess I don't like YouTube, and something like sometimes when I'm trying to play music on my phone through YouTube, it doesn't work very well, and they need to fix that. I'm
We just
really
switch
mad at
services, Tim.
yeah.
Just
I don't know. I'm really mad at them for that. I don't know. I can't like you on a different level. Like I can only always have an open mind. I do in fact find some enjoyment in Russell Brand's anti-authoritarianism and anti-establishment establishmentism. But I get your criticism for sure. Like that makes sense.
yeah. Again, I generally don't have strong opinions about the guy,
Yeah.
but
Um
this is how it goes. People want to weigh in on these
w-
things, so I
my
end up
favorite
reading about
moment
it
of
more than
his
I wanted.
Yeah, my favorite moment of his is I caught him interacting with Patrick Bet David, right? And Patrick Bet David had some stats all piled up in front of him about the welfare system, and Russell Brand maintained his position that hey, the way you're presenting that is awful and it denigrates people, you know, and two major minor stars in the podcast world. And Russell maintained what I felt was integrity. And he was on PBD's podcast, or was PB, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. This is like politics of personality, but he stood on a side that I often stand on. And part of the reason why I'm libertarian and criticize conservatism is because you guys are being manipulated to hate poor people and you don't see it. You know what I mean? And if you could get a better grasp of that and know that you're being played, and Russell Brand kind of made that point to PBD, and that's a point I feel is not made often enough, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I enjoyed his advocacy there.
Fair enough. All right. But on that note, I think we should probably call it a night.
Yeah, I had a blast, Kevin. This was fun.
That's fun. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah,
David, Shelley,
man. Thanks, Shelley. Who else?
John.
Joe, and we hadn't seen Joe in a while. Michael Rouse. I can't believe Mike's my buddy from up on the Wa. He doesn't grow his own marijuana, I promise.
Mike Rouse, who left this lovely comment for us.
Yeah, that's him. That's my bro. He's a little crazy.
Thanks for dropping in, Mike. So for the podcast out there, I'll just read his answer. You're on a list, LOL. Bushels of buttholes.
Yeah, that's something he would say. Then we had a couple Facebook users. I think there was two different ones, but I'm not sure. I don't think it was. I didn't get the vibe that it was Queeter, and I didn't get the vibe that it was Brian LaRusso. So I don't know who it was, but we'll figure it out later.
Yeah, that's.
But anyways, thanks,
David?
Shelley.
I think it's David and Brian.
Oh, was it?
I'm looking at Very David
good.
Race and Brian Hoyt.
Was it Brian LaRusso? Or Brian Sutton? Or some other Brian?
Facebook name Brian Hoyt.
Hoyt. Oh, all right. Yeah, that would make sense. Usually his name comes up. All right. Well, that's how that goes.
But anyway, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Have a great night. Take care.